Welcome back to another episode of Reading Rehab. I am Mike Brown, joined by,
Brian Gardner.
And Pat Healy.
and this week we are talking about an article hot off the press, so hot that we're only looking at the manuscript right now, and that is torque strength targets, sex and sport differences in knee and shoulder profiles among amateur athletes. This was published in JOSPT Open in January 2025. So, yeah, right out the gate, we weren't really a big fan of this article. Not just that it was in abstract form, which I really dislike reading not abstracts, manuscripts. But yeah, there's some things that we'll get into that we didn't love. But yeah, I think just going over the objective of the study, they say the main objective of this study was to describe torque strength and explosive strength parameters for the shoulder and knee joints in healthy, high-performance athletes participating in amateur sports. What do you guys, I guess to spoil it, do you guys feel like they achieved this objective? I have my thoughts, but...
I can't say I have a thought around that, so I'm curious what your idea is.
I would also agree with Pat.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they didn't do a great job achieving this objective because I guess skipping down to like their methods or the participants, they had 233 athletes in 27 different sports. So each sample was really small. And then they grouped these into 6 categories: team sports, endurance sports, middle distance sports, which I don't know what they mean by that. Like, I know what middle distance running is, but I don't know about a middle distance sport itself. Speed and strength sports, precision skill sports, and combat sports. And I don't know. I feel like because they had so many different categories and sports in such a relatively small sample size, if it was 233 athletes from the same sport, I think it'd be easier to say they achieved this objective. But like, even if you group it into categories like team sports, there's such a wide variety of team sports that like I feel like I can't really take the results from this study and be like, yep, so I have this basketball player, they need to be hitting X. But same with like, yep, I have this water polo player, they should be hitting the same thing. So
Yeah,
there's my thought.
I see what you mean. Yeah. They also just completely left those the endurance and the middle distance sport out from their table at the end. They were like, you know what, we just don't need to present this.
That's because where is it? In one of the tables, now I'm like scrolling all the way down. In one of the tables, yeah, so table 1, the demographic distribution, they have 1 endurance sport athlete and 2 middle distance sport athletes. So I'm like
1 male and 0 female, and then it's 2 and 2 for
2 and 2. Okay, so
still,
4 for middle
not
distance
enough.
sport.
Still not enough.
And I want to know, like, how did I get the categories, like I understand outside of what a middle distance sport is, like I understand how they got the categories, but then I want to know examples for each category. Because again, team sport is really broad. Combat sports like can only be so broad, right? But then like middle distance sport just seems very particular. So I don't know. I guess I'm getting caught up on the middle distance sport piece.
the track
leave it. Yeah, I was saying, leave it to this guy getting caught up on running again. We get it.
I just thought it was. I thought it was interesting that they went with both shoulder and knee. I mean, I think they could have gone one way or the other. And I think they could have found more subjects to look at, like even if it was, say, a precision skilled sport And in my head, it's like might be baseball. Let's just give that context. Because that would be an interesting looking at knee. Because I mean, you do see knee injuries, but not like contact injuries or that kind of stuff. So, but who knows? They got to choose.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't necessarily enjoy for the results is they only put the max peak torque, which is okay, cool, good to know. And then relative peak torque, Newton. Oh wait, yeah, never mind. It's there, Newton meters to kilogram. So never mind. This is my own misreading. What are you saying, Mike?
I was gonna say, but they only did that for the knee. They didn't give the like average peak torque things for the shoulder. They only talk about like they don't give the absolute values. You have to look at the table. Whatever the table at the end is.
I was gonna say, Mike, it's right here. It's
yeah,
in the table.
Yeah, in this table that is huge with so many data points, I was like, this is like giving me anxiety trying to read this. But yeah, they don't like write it out in the results section, and then they only talk about males relative to females because that's like really the only like meaningful data you can pull from this, because there are so many categories.
Yeah, it's like it's the only sampling pool that had enough of its kind to like compare, because everything else there wasn't enough in the every other category to make any kind of like comparison.
Generalization.
It was like
exactly.
let's just go with the binary here. So
Yeah, and then like we get that males have higher relative torques than females, which is like I feel like that's been established pretty well, at least among similar populations. Like males are going to be stronger. I did think it was interesting looking at the table that has tons of stuff on it. If you look at I just looked at team sports, but team sport athletes, external rotation and internal rotation strength. One, it's pretty similar, from 180 degrees per second to 300 degrees per second. And like females aren't, I guess, in an absolute term, females aren't that far away from males in strength. I guess then if you look at it relatively, like there's still like a 15 to 20% difference between them. But like for team sport athletes, external rotation at 180 degrees per second, males are 0.45 Newton meters per kilogram and females are 0.34 Newton meters per kilogram. So it's only 0.1, but I'm sure that 0.1 is tough to get.
Yeah, and I will give this article, credit where they did describe the testing position for both knee and shoulder. The shoulder being supine at 90 degrees abduction, 90 degrees flexion, and then they're just going through the IR like that. They didn't. I don't think they talked about like foot positioning, because I know like on the Isokinetic machines, they usually come with like a footrest on the bottom, or you can like be a hook lying position, and it's just like it's one of those tiny things. I guess it's just like bugging me where I don't have all the pieces. But and they did give like the testing procedure, so it was like like the 3 rep warm up and then 10 reps, 30 seconds, 3 reps, and then 10 reps. So
yeah. Pat, this was actually something I wanted to ask you about because I've never used an isokinetic dynamometer. Is 10 reps like a typical amount? Like that feels like a lot if you're trying to go for max every single rep. And then for like knee flexion or knee flexion extension, they did, where is it? Like 30 seconds between the 10 rep at 60 degrees, and then before they started the familiarization with the 180 degrees. So I'm like, this is almost more of an endurance test than a
Yeah.
max strength test.
Yeah. So from my experience with some of the pre-programmed protocols and some of the protocols set out from like the CSMI, it is a little odd where the lower degrees per second are usually like your max strength or like your peak torque test, where you might only have like 3 reps and it's like at a slower quote unquote speed. Usually people just reference like 60 degrees per second. And then when they go up faster, they try to utilize that more for a fatigue index. But I it's kind of odd because like you bring up a good point where it's like you're trying to get your max, and I guess if you're trying to output max as many times, let's say 10 or 15, then you can track like when do they start to peter off. But yeah, I don't say I have like a good reasoning why that's been that way, and you don't just keep it for 5, to see like, oh, how much can you really crank this out if we tighten up the rep range?
Yeah, because they do say later, like somewhere in the article, they say all measurements were done with a set of 10 repetitions, as participants commonly do not reach their peak torque when the protocols are based on 3 or fewer repetitions. So I read that and I was like, okay, cool. They have a justification for why it's not 3, because honestly, 3 would have been like my go-to. But then I'm like, why not do like 5 or something? Like the 10 just seems like so much. And I think about like seeing all the videos of the people like really going ham on an isokinetic machine. Um, I feel like that's just got to be really hard to do 10 times in a row.
Yeah. I don't want to get away from the article too much, but I do have a story about this where I normally have just been testing the like modified seated position where it's like 30 degrees of abduction, 30 degrees of forward elevation. Is essentially you're in like scaption, quote unquote. And the other day I tried doing this position in this article, and I just did the protocol we had in our system, and I did not check how many reps it was because I could not get to the computer to click through it to see what it was because I'm lying supine on the device already like
You're strapped in.
so so my coworker, I had her come by. I'm like, oh, can you just click some buttons for me? I want to do this testing and see what it is. And I think it was five reps. I can't remember how many reps it was at 60 degrees per second, which is like, holy smokes. Like that's, you are spent by the end of that, especially since, unlike the knee, you have a lot more range of motion going for the shoulder. So it's just a lot more time under tension for you getting through that entire range. Well, I get done and I get like 30 seconds rest, and I saw it was going to be the next 180 degrees per second. And I'm like, man, if this is like 10 or 15 reps, I'm going to cry. And then the screen pops up after my rest was over, and it was 15 reps. I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. Here we go. And so, like you said,
true endurance test.
yeah, like you said, Mike, it was just me going bang, 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 just like it. But here's the thing: 180. Yes, it's like fast. It's still 1 second, which in terms of like sporting actions, 1 second is a long time.
Yeah.
And so 1 second to go all the way down. So I don't know if you're watching like here, one. And I'm probably going too fast even right now, but just boom, 2, 3, and it is hell. So yeah, needless to say, I've not done it on I've not done that on anyone yet, because it's like I don't.
Yet.
Yeah, well, I put yet because I'm like on the fence of utility for it. It's like I still need to sift it out a little, I think. But I'm still just going for peak, baby. I'm going slow. I'm going high.
Put that on a put that on a t-shirt. Um, I was also wondering about the positioning on that too, because it's interesting. You said you liked how they talked about the shoulder setup. The big thing I didn't like I liked that they said supine shoulder at 90-90, but they didn't say where I guess the starting point was in external rotation. Like, are they starting as far externally rotated as they can and then
Yes.
going all the way into internal?
So that is a great point you bring up, because you're so right. It is so different, especially if we're looking at, like, you brought up the good point of team sport athletes. Well, if I have a baseball player versus I don't know, give me some
They had a
sugar.
basketball. They had a basketball
Yeah,
player.
yeah, and like how you said, Mike, if you are doing, oh, we're just going end range to end range, well, that's a lot different than if you're going to preset a range of motion. But even when you preset a range of motion, someone's length tension relationship based on their available range of motion is going to be different. So where they hit their peak and everything else is going to be different. So yes, that is a big caveat in shoulder testing, because of the anatomical differences based on sport, and also just the anatomical variance, just like on normal humans. Not that athletes aren't well, actually, I take that back. There are some athletes who are not human, but you know.
Yeah, because I think about like a baseball pitcher who has a stupid amount of range of motion, especially into external rotation. Probably the whole arc is similar, but they have a ton of external rotation range of motion. Maybe if everyone's standardized to like starting in like 90 degrees of external rotation, maybe they're not in the optimal length tension relationship to actually express their max force. Like maybe they can express their max force like in like at the total like one totally cocked position, which they wouldn't be in this testing potentially. That's why I'm like, I want to know. Can
Yeah.
you show me?
Yeah. That kind of goes into the knee setup as well, though, because I know they used the anti-shear bar, and then also they said they used 90 degrees range of motion, and they didn't specify the knee. Now, I'm assuming that they mean they went 0 to 90, but it is not stated. So I'm just assuming that, because based on my own experience, like, it's really hard to go beyond 90 on these devices in the seated position. But you could, if you wanted to do 100 to 10 degrees,
10.
and like, 'cause it's just not stated. And truthfully, I know for like, if you were to go on CSMI for the humac norm, they don't test people out into terminal knee extension to just like not mess with the uh the knee extension mechanism, or whatever I'm trying to say. They just don't bring them to total knee extension. That's what it is. So uh more inferences, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and I want to give this paper the benefit of the doubt too, that like maybe because we're reading the manuscript now, there's things that will be in the actual article that we don't see. Like for example, I don't know if this is what you were alluding to, Pat, when you were like, "Whoa." But like at least I couldn't find the supplementary article,
yes,
the supplementary material.
yes.
um because that's how like I would have gotten my answer on what the testing position is.
Bruh, call me Shia LaBeouf, because I was digging. All right, I was looking for it. All right, man.
Yeah.
I could not find it anywhere, and because I was curious about all the setup and everything, and they said they had it in the supplementals, and it was nowhere. But
Yeah. So I'm like, it has to like it's just gotta be there when it's actually like in true print, not just in manuscript form. So maybe we should have just waited on this, give it another month, and then
We
all
could
of
always
our
revisit it
yeah.
in a couple months.
Yeah, how does it hold up?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you feel about the figures? I'm still been staring at them for a while here, where it
The
essentially they're saying if you have a greater average peak torque, your RFD is going to be higher. And, like, I'm assuming that's kind of what we're
Yeah. Yeah,
taking
because
away
there was
from this,
a very strong correlation between them.
which, like, I I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm just being cynical here, but like you need to have force to produce force rapidly, So it's like I think that's kind of redundant, but so it goes. So it goes, mate.
Yeah, I agree. I was like, that's actually one of the few like key takeaways that I feel confident in taking away from this, because all the regression, or not regressions, all the uh R squared values are just so high on all of
Yeah.
these. Like, the lowest is 90%. There's 90%, 94, 94, and 98. So it's like we can be pretty confident in that, but then to your point, like I don't know how groundbreaking that discovery is.
Yeah. Well, I guess, taking away the fact that, like, probably peak torque is going to be your like your biggest or your lowest hanging fruit, like, don't try to satisfy other boxes until you establish good peak torque. And I can understand where that might be challenging to classify what is quote unquote good peak torque, and I can resonate where these authors are trying to help fix that problem to a degree. um I just don't know how much, like, I would actually reference, like, I don't know if this is going to change my process of just trying to utilize, like, my own database from clinical experience and, like, the clientele I have, or just essentially limb symmetry index asterisks there, based on sport. Because, like how we said, baseball players just have that jacked up one arm. So jacked up being like giant. So
Yeah, I agree. I really like the the thought behind this paper. Um, I just think there were a couple things that made it much less useful, especially for me clinically. Like them only having one endurance athlete, like I can't use this. They got nothing for me.
Can't get off that running high. Can't get off that
yeah.
running high.
Yeah,
Come to
yeah.
found out, wow, Mike, there's more to life than running. There's more sports than running. Holy smokes. Let me tell you, do I got something for you coming up this weekend?
The Super Bowl. Um, yeah, I don't know what more I have to add about this article.
Um, yeah, yeah, no, I got nothing.
Yeah, I have
That's
nothing
about
on
it.
as well.
All right. Well, that's a little shorter one today. So, as always, if you have listened this far and enjoyed what you listened to, please leave us a nice review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and follow us on Instagram at Reading Rehab Pod. Thanks.